Hello, hello, hello. It's Marissa. And I just have to say that when Lee Baucom contacted me, I was not sure if he would be the right fit for the podcast because he is an expert he's like a marriage coach. And as I was talking to him, I realized, oh my goodness, he is describing exactly some of the issues that I had when I was in my first years of teaching, and I would go home completely emotionally drained and would have literally nothing left to give my husband. Plus, I didn't set any boundaries. I was completely still answering emails and still, doing what I felt like I needed to do. And if you are like I was at that point, when you get home, you really have nothing left to give, but you continue to give to the school and give them your time and your energy, your emotional energy, then this really is going to be the episode for you. Because when I sit down with Lee, who has 26 years of experience in marriage coaching and marriage counseling, and he's the host of the Save the Marriage podcast. He's a 7-time author who has helped thousands of couples rebuild connection, and we focus a lot on connection. And it's not just through grand gestures, but through small, powerful shifts that actually work in real life. And trust me, what he shares today might completely change the way that you think about not only your relationship, but how you are showing up in not only your relationship, but how you show up when you get home after this insane day of teaching or being in education. So I am really excited. I can't wait for you to hear what Lee has to say, and I'm going to leave it there. Let's get into it. Hi, Lee. Thank you so much for joining me and the listeners today. I'm so excited to have you here. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing so well. I can't wait to get into this conversation. So I want to start with the fact that, so many teachers these days are just emotionally drained at the end of the day. And I would love your advice where, I mean, if you're like me, when I was teaching, I would come home and completely like ghost my husband, even though he's right there. So how do you reconnect with your partner when you genuinely feel like you are depleted and you have nothing left to give?
Yeah, so let's do a little pivot because I think one of the ways that we mistake connection is assuming that we're giving rather than the fact that there is a process that actually feeds, right? That you're getting something from connection. And that is different for teachers during the day. You are giving, right? You're dealing
Definitely.
with, yeah, they got the students who are wanting something or drawing something from you, and you're having to give. But in a connected relationship, they you get from the connection as much as you're giving. And so it can be recharging to be connecting. And I think sometimes we get stuck in this, oh, this is something I have to do. This connection thing and dealing with my spouse is something I have to do rather than
Right.
this is something that feeds us. I just a side note though, and I think we'll get into it as we continue, that assumes that you've built some connection, that you're not having to create that connection. Like you're in the flywheel of connection, as I talk about it. So if you've got a disconnected relationship, that's a different matter. That is often an energy cost, and we can talk more about that too to get that started. And you're dealing with momentum. So any time we're talking about teachers, the physics teachers will relate to this. You got to get the momentum going
Yeah.
before you have it rolling. So there are some physics dynamics that fit here too. But to go back to your original question, at the end of the day, most people have given to whatever it is of their day, whether it's taking care of a house and kids or taking care of students in the classroom or taking care of work. And that is an energy loss. Connection, though, can be an energy gain. There is a piece of that that can feed you.
Okay, so seeing the connection as something that is there to sort of give you energy back, definitely. And what are some signs that your marriage might actually be, or your relationship, I should say, might actually just be a connection problem in disguise rather than maybe something more? Are there kind of differences between the ways that, the different types of issues that you can have?
Yes, so this is going to be a slightly long-winded question. So let me see if I can break it down a little
Okay.
bit. That actually is the core problem. And so when I have people telling me about the problems in their marriage, they are almost always naming symptoms of the problem. And I said almost always. So
Okay.
first, there are people who find themselves in abusive, toxic situations. That's one group, and I actually don't encourage people who find themselves in that type of a situation to try to work on the relationship because it's now a safety question. It's not a structural question in the relationship. It's a safety question for the individual. So there are toxic people. So we'll say that I've already said if that's the case, that's a separate issue that does need
Yep.
to be dealt with, but
Yeah.
we're going to set that. So here's what often happens for relationships. You build this relationship, you spend your time building up the connection, you decide you're going to spend the rest of your life together, you go through a fairly short ceremony for that big of a change,
Yeah.
and then you're off to go, figure it out on your own. And so I often talk about this is the one place where we have, on the job training with no supervision. So you're making your mistakes and you're making your mistakes in a way that often bakes those mistakes into your pattern together, your dance of the relationship. So you get into life and you say, okay, all of that energy we were putting into our relationship, now we need to redistribute that and put it in other things like our careers, parenting, aging parents, friends, hobbies, whatever it is. There's something that you went, we set that to the side and now we've got to get to that. Or these are new areas for us that are going to cost us more energy and we've got to get to that. And so you take the energy there thinking, okay, we've got this marriage thing. We've got that nailed down. We've got the relationship nailed down. We don't have to worry about that. So we will hit the pause button on that. That's where I refer to as the pause button marriage. And we'll come back to us at some future date. And it's okay because we've got that. And the problem with that is that relationships don't work that way. There is no suspended animation for a relationship. And so what you're doing when you feel like you're just pausing for attention to go elsewhere is you are disconnecting from your spouse. And the problem with that is it begins to be baked into the pattern as we talked about in the on the job training. And so as the disconnection grows, the distance grows and the time to get back to us is always pushed a little further out when the kids are at a different stage, when the career is at a different stage, whatever, when things calm down at school, right? And when we finally get past this strategic plan or this new what there's just so many things that it feels like we've just got to get past that because they feel urgent and just using that the whole framework that we have, I would consider this to be important work that often gets set aside by what feels like an urgent work, and so the importance of connection is lost. So they build that in. And then it does begin to have symptoms that start to emerge. Like we feel like we're ships passing in the night. We're just roommates. We're arguing over the stupidest things. We can't talk about money or kids or religion or sex or in laws or anything else without having an explosive event, right? Or we don't talk at all.
Right.
And all of those are what they will bring to a therapist or coach or whoever is going to help them, only to be trying to solve the symptoms and not that underlying problem of disconnection.
Okay, I see.
So let me layer in a little bit more,
Okay,
if you don't
go
mind.
for it. I'm following
Yeah,
you.
okay. Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about where that disconnection happens because a lot of times that feels very nebulous to people. And I want to make it as concrete as possible. Humans connect on three different levels
Okay.
And so Clementine, my pup, is beside me. We just went on a walk, so she is taking her recovery nap. And so I'll let her nap. But the reason I bring her up is because she's a warm-blooded creature, and warm-blooded creatures understand the first level of connection, and that is physical connection.
Okay.
That's being physically close to someone. So loving touch. Last night I wasn't feeling well. What did Clem do? Hops up on the bed beside me, curls up against me, and is just against me, right? And then that's her way of feeling close to me and also wanting me to feel close to her. That's
Exactly.
what
Yeah.
we do. And a spouse does that too. So my wife was also patting my head, going, "Bless your heart." So, it was both ways. And so that's loving touch. When I talk about this, sometimes people say, "Oh, you mean sex?" And my response is, "Well, that is a version, but no, that's not actually what I'm talking about. That is a type of physical connection, but so is hand holding, patting backs, everything,
Hugs. I mean, just
hugs.
coming home and being like in the proximity of having that physical touch with your partner can often alleviate stress that you've been going through, definitely. And especially nowadays when people are like hungry for connection,
Yeah.
it is something important that if you're not going home and immediately kind of touching base with your husband or your partner, I should say, that's something you can definitely, start doing.
Yeah. So, and I want to track this back to the early thing of, when you come home empty. So, what do you need to refill? It's our connection pot. That's what you need back. And so, when people say, I've had too much, I feel drained, I don't want to be touched, that probably is actually what they need, but a mutual touch as opposed to the tugs from somebody who wants your attention, right? So a mutual tug or a hug. And what people underestimate is the physiological, biological piece of that, the cascade of hormonal events that happen in not just a side hug, but a true hug.
Yeah.
That cascade actually calms the nervous system. And so if you're feeling frazzled, that's because your nervous system is ramped up from everything that's happened, and a loving hug can bring that back. So instead of going, "I've got to go give my spouse a hug," it becomes, "I have the opportunity for both of us to get what we need from that." So first level, and that is the basic level because we share it with warm-blooded creatures, but because humans have this language capacity, we have a couple of other levels available to us if we choose to use them, and we ought to. So the second level is emotional connection.
Okay.
Emotional connection is partly nonverbal, and let me just say, this is how we connect with any other human, not just our spouse. It's just deeper with our spouse. So, for instance, as we're talking, I
Mhm.
can tell you're kind of on the same page with me about what I'm saying because you're nodding. That's nonverbal. I'm doing
Right.
the verbal, you're doing the nonverbal, right? So the emotional connection is both verbal and nonverbal. And there are two core elements of that exist, especially between couples, and that is feeling like they get each other and that they support each other. So the nonverbal. There are plenty of times when I'm watching our kids do some meltdown, and my kids are adults now, so they don't melt down anymore. But when they used to melt down,
Yes.
I would look at my wife, and we would look at each other and just give each other that look, that knowing look of, "I know what you're thinking, you know what I'm thinking. We get each other," right? That is nothing needed to be said, but we get each other. When my wife laughs at something I say that I intended to be funny, she gets me, right? And vice versa. When she says something and I can respond to it in a way that tells her that I get her, that's a mutual thing. As is feeling supported, whether it's a good day that you can talk about of, wow, this was a really good day, and feel like the other person is with you on that rather than kind of squishing your joy.
Yep.
So when people go, "Oh, that's so cool. I'm so glad you had a great day," or, "Wow, I'm so sorry you had a rough day." And a lot of times that is nonverbal too, because the person is just expressing it and you're able to be along with them, nodding or shaking your head or some other way of letting them know you're on the same page with what they're saying. Emotional connection is one of the ones that people think they're doing, but aren't doing very frequently. because they end up with reporting with each other. And this connection is rapporting with each other. You're building a rapport with the other person. And by the way, the building doesn't stop in a relationship. You continue to build that rapport
Yes.
over the life of a relationship. But people get to reporting. So someone comes home, how was your day? Oh, I had a meeting and the administration had this crazy report I had to get in, and the class was a mess. That's a report.
Right.
What I would be sharing is how difficult that was for me and why. I really didn't feel well when I got there today, and the kids were a mess. And then I have the administration, and it's just very frustrating. And I hate to deal with the bureaucracy. I mean, that would be a sharing of the day of what it meant to you. And that's what that emotional connection is about. When couples start talking about what their day was like or what their kids did, they've resorted to just the report.
The report. So if I were to come home, or a teacher was to go home and say exactly that, this is how I felt, and I'm glad I don't have to deal with that again, or something like that. Should the partner, like, try to give advice, or just ask, or rather ask, like, what do you need from me right now? Or rather just say what was in your control, or have them focus on what was good in the day? How should the partner respond?
That depends on what you need. And to be able to say that, right? So
Okay.
one of the things that I often hear people say is, my spouse always wants to fix things, and I don't need it to be fixed.
Right.
But you can say that. I
Okay. Yeah.
don't need your advice on that. I just wanted to share this. Or for a spouse to be able to say, are you looking for me to just listen, or are you looking for some advice and feedback? And then you're in your lane, right? And both responses could be appropriate. Either one could make sense depending on what the person feel like they need. I mean, there's
Absolutely.
sometimes, and if there's a mismatch, it feels like a mismatch. Like, all you're saying is, "Oh, bless your heart, poor thing. I'm so sorry you had a rough day, and I need you to tell me what I do now. Wait, I need some help on that." But if the person thought they were doing the right support thing, or vice versa, they thought they were doing the right advice thing, and the other person just needed to be heard, you miss the possibility of a connection just because you don't have clarity. So either side can ask or claim what they need from that. And that clarity helps a lot, because often people don't know what to do. I mean, that's one of the most frequent things. We've had some people in our families that someone's died or been sick, and people are like, I just don't know what to say. And I'm like, sometimes your presence is what matters. And sometimes they do need some feedback and advice and help in
Absolutely.
getting
It
things done.
varies, right? And that's it. Sometimes maybe they need you to go for a walk with them just to decompress, or it varies. And I think that's the big thing, right? What do you need from me? Do you need this? Do you need this? Like, and being honest and saying, actually, this is actually what I need. So I think
And you point,
we're,
it's a two-way, right?
yes.
You can ask for it, or you can ask what I need to do. And either way, there's a, can you give me some support? Now that does bring us to the place in a disconnected relationship. When you ask the symptom, if you're asking for support and your spouse is not willing or able to do that, that is a symptom of the disconnection. And
Right.
sometimes that is not because the other person is toxic. It is because you're not in a pattern of connection. That's a symptom of that disconnection. So that's that emotional level. Next level up is spiritual connection. When I say that,
Okay.
people
This is
often
the
go,
third
"Oh,
level you're saying.
yeah, third level." So that's when they think that I'm talking about religion, and my response is not no, but yes, in the sense that our religious views hold our core values, and
Right.
that's the area of the spiritual, of what is most important to us. What do we want in life? What are our goals? What are our dreams? What are our hopes? What are our fears? What are our core values? Interestingly, that's the level of connection where people often fall in love. They have this deep conversation. They've met somebody they're attracted to. So we got the physical attraction.
Yep.
They spend time connecting with them. So they've created this emotional connection. And then they have this conversation about what they dream about in life, what they hope for in life, where they came from in life. And that's where, and I saw lots of premarital couples who would always tell me that story and say, that's when I knew I loved them, because
Right.
that knowing that vulnerability, and because many people don't recognize that as a separate level of connection, they stop doing it. They stop having that connection. And that is the most profound level, because you're being most vulnerable. I don't tell my friends my deepest fears and hopes and dreams. I might hint at them. I might say, "Oh, I want to do this," but that is something that can be shared with this one person who says, "I'm with you through whatever comes our way, whatever days we have. We're together, so we can share that."
Is
So
that
those
the
are the three
wording that
levels.
comes along with spiritual connection? So if you feel like you've lost it a little bit, it's sort of going back to saying to the other person, like, I'm with you, we're in this together, you can tell me anything. Is that
So
the
here's the irony. Sure, you can have that conversation,
yeah.
but those I just paraphrase what most wedding vows are.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whether it's a
True.
good day or bad day, a rich day or poor day, a healthy day, sick day, that covers the days. So it's built in there. And sometimes we gloss over it because that ceremony there is a level of performance as we're up there and everybody's watching us. And so we say those lines and don't think about it. And sometimes it is helpful for couples to say, "Hey, what did we vow to do? What
Right.
is that commitment that we're honoring?" And that can bring you back to a safety factor, because where does connection happen best? In safety. Why does my dog want to curl up beside me? Because she feels safe. Why do I share something of a hard day with my wife? Because I feel safe there. Why can I say this is the deepest part of my existence to my wife? Because I feel safe there, and vice versa. So safety is a piece of that. And the vows that we say in our wedding are what create the safety of, we're in this for life, so let's make it good.
100, yeah, 100%. I can see like almost going back to that point and being like, we have to feel like, once we feel safe together, then we can get through this. We can work through, we can talk through it. Um, and especially when you're a teacher and you've come home and your energy is depleted sometimes. And that kind of leads me into my next point that I really want to get focused on with teachers, because this is something I didn't do when I was teaching, and it's setting boundaries with my partner.
Mhm. Yeah.
Sorry. Not so much setting boundaries with my partner, but setting boundaries with myself,
Yeah.
so that when I would come home, I would have like take off the teacher hat and have like, in the beginning, I would always have my emails coming through. I would always feel like I needed to message people back. And my poor husband, he didn't get any of me when I was coming home. So, with setting boundaries, what do you feel are things that teachers should do to set boundaries? I know for me, the one thing I would say is non-negotiable is take your notifications off on your emails. That's what I would say.
Yeah. So let me step back and say the reason for boundaries is because boundaries do create safety. That's why we set boundaries, period, with people. Like saying to somebody, "You can't yell at me." That is a boundary that I think is
Right.
important. Create safety. So we're talking about safety, and so boundaries at home for teachers. So let me just go back. My mom was in education. Now my sister-in-law is, and my aunt was, and so we have lots of educators in my family. And the difference was, when my mom was doing that, somebody had to work pretty hard to get in touch with her after hours. Like they had to find our phone number and call her, and it had to ring the family line, and they had to
Yes.
hope to get my mother. Right? No longer the case.
Right.
So let me just give a reframe. This is my phone, and I would say that this phone is everybody else's agenda for you, unless you control it.
Yep. I love that.
And so an email coming your way is not your agenda. It's somebody else's agenda. A voicemail, a message of any type, anything that's coming through all of the platforms that the educators have, those are all other people's agendas. And we get to choose how we're going to deal with those agendas. Some people realize that maybe they need to check on something at some point. So set a time to do that, but regulate it. And if possible, don't at all once
Yes.
you're
If that
off
is
the
possible.
clock,
Yes.
if that is possible. And obviously, there are some places that require it. I knew some teachers; they were in a private school system, and the reason I was talking with them is because it had become toxic, and the reason was because administration said you have to be available to the parents 24 hours a day,
Wow.
and that's the toxicity. So I recognize that there are some outside pieces to that, even if it's less than that. But if possible, so my phone does not have emails at all on it. I have to go look at emails on something else. I took them off because it's somebody else's agenda, and if it pops up, I'm going to notice it. Um, I can silence agendas and do focus or silence notifications and do focus when I am at home. I do that. So just for people, this is not an ad. I have no connection with them, but Brick is a device that
Oh,
allows you to limit what your phone can do.
what is it? Brick,
You
BRICK?
BRICK. It's a little device. The company created it because they realized that they were getting pulled into all of these other things. And so when I come to my office, I can click on my brick and it will limit me being able to get to social media and things like that. That might
Wow.
just be a distraction from my work. Now, all I have to do is unbrick it, one step to get back on. But by having done that, I have intentionally set, I don't want to be notified. And we can do that without that. You can set a focus time when you get home. There are other ways of doing that. But the important thing, this is not your agenda, it's somebody else's.
Yeah, I love that. I love that thinking. Like shift your thinking to look at your phone as somebody else's agenda, not your agenda. Or if you're in a situation, one of my best friends is a principal, right? She has to see what's going on, but set a time to, come home, make that connection time with your family, and then be like, okay, from this to this hour, I'm going to check my emails and check what's going on and devote that time to class, but I'm not going to keep it on the whole time. So I
Yeah.
think that's also important, like setting the boundary of when are you going, if you need to check your phone, then put a specific time on it and then just put it on. I like putting mine on even sleep mode, doesn't let anything through.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and so what you named is so important because what we allow to happen is the trickle of attention, right? So instead of just sitting down and going, okay, I'm going to respond for the next half hour or 15 minutes or whatever, and I'm just going to respond to them all at once, which is a focus time. We do a trickle time where it comes in, you respond to that. Then you try to turn your attention back, but you've diverted your attention away. And when we divert our attention away from our core importance, our family, for these what is other people's urgency, but rarely your urgency, we're not giving them ourselves. We're giving them this trickle. And that is what our always on kind of world has created for us, also for the kids in the class. I mean, we see that all the time when, they're checking something in the middle of class. You're losing such chunks of attention. And we can see it in others. Sometimes we miss it in ourselves. That is, oh, I'll just check this message. Oh, I'll just check this message. And pretty soon we've whittled away our attention from what's important. So that is, if there's a way to do that, I would just, and if people say, I can't do that, my question is, how could you lessen it? Like,
Yeah.
if most people recognize that it feels like I've got to respond because it's on my phone, but let's say you were at some event and you couldn't pull your phone out, would that email be okay at the end of that time? Probably.
Exactly. What if something happened to you and you were on, like, what if your Wi-Fi all went down or something, and you
Yeah.
couldn't, then people would survive. That's how it used to be.
And it worked just fine.
And it worked just fine. I also want to say, that point when you get home, trying to really look at that time in order to build that connection. But as a mindset coach, I always tell my clients, really trying to focus on everybody's wins of the day or what was the best part of the day, really seeing, can you enjoy each other's space? And by everyone starting off telling everything bad that happened that day, which is easily done, then you put kind of everybody's mind in a negative space. And really trying to set the boundary of, okay, you know what, when we get home, it's going to be like, first you have to tell me something good that happened before you want to get my advice on what bad happened. What good happened today? What
Yeah.
are we grateful for today? So I just want to add that in there too, because I think that's an important boundary to set. And I think it helps build all three of the types of connection that you were talking about.
And what you noted about that, so not only does it create the mindset for other people, but for yourself, if that's what you're going to lead with, you start looking for that.
Yes.
That's what we know about the gratitude exercises that people do. Why does it change so much? Why does it have so much evidence? Because if you're going to write down, let's say, just three things for which you're grateful for each day, you start looking for the things you're going to be grateful for, and that changes your frame from what's wrong to what's right. That doesn't mean you ignore the difficult things, but our brain has a negative bias to find those negative things. And so we have to actually build the bias to even it out, not to take it over, but to even it out to be able to see what's good. And so
Right.
you're doing that intentionally. And if you start off, I've had friends who did the rose and thorn. What's the rose of the day? What's the best thing that happened today? And what's the
Oh, I've
tough
never
thing that
heard
happened?
of that.
Yeah.
What is it called?
Rose and thorn. So you're looking, rose, the rose
Oh,
stem has the thorns on it and has this
yeah.
beautiful thing at the top, and you can't get the beautiful unless you've got the thorns on the side. And so they'll do a rose and thorn at dinner where everybody has to say what's the coolest thing that happened today and what's a tough thing that happened today, and they get support for both. So
I love
it's a
that.
balance point, but it starts with the rose. You don't do the thorn until you've talked about your rose.
Talked about the rose and thorn. That is amazing. Wow, I really love that because I agree. Like our brains, once you start being able to focus on the positives, you do look for that more. And also the thorns, like what do you need to talk about? Because also it's important to foster that I'm here for you, right? Let's
Yeah.
talk about what's might be bothering you or what was tough today. So that's amazing.
Yes.
Fantastic.
And so now I'm going to take then as a pivot to the relationship, because what we just talked about, that negativity bias, it infects relationships,
Yes.
because when you are feeling some disconnection, it is much more likely that you're going to find fault with your spouse than to look for what's going well with the spouse. And so that negativity can often overwhelm the reality of the situation, where yes, every person is imperfect and has their challenges, but sometimes we get so stuck in seeing the imperfections and seeing the problems that we miss what we do have. I've spent a lot of time with very successful couples that seem to have lost track of their success, and all they can see is the negativity of it. And so practicing this helps us to be more well-rounded in assessing our relationship and building on the strengths. So there's a lot of research on, do you try to shore up everybody's weaknesses or do you try to expand their strengths? And there is a place to work on the weakness, but there's absolutely a place to work on the strengths and build those strengths. There's an endless supply of weaknesses. Some of the best teachers I had in my life use that in education by going, what are you good at?
Yes.
We can see what you're not so good at, but what are you good at? And let's grow that. I'm dyslexic. And so I've spent years with teachers telling me how I could not write until I had, and there's 7 books that would now debate that with people. And so I've kind of proven it wrong in some ways, but
Yes.
I still have that. And the reason I started writing was because I had a professor in college who called me on it and said, you actually are a good writer. You just don't do it their way. That's okay, but don't hide behind the fact that somebody told you couldn't write. When you can, you just aren't doing it the way you do. And so he was able to call out a strength, not try to fix the fact that I was horrible at building an outline and building the index cards. I was great at just writing and then going back. So same in a relationship. How do you build on the strengths that you have there rather than getting stuck on the weaknesses that are there and will always be there? There's no perfect relationship. There are some places to shore up those weaknesses, but generally we shore them up better when we have strengthened what we're good at.
I love that. And I think what you said, one thing I want to also touch on is when your partner or your kids tell you that you're good at something, believe them, because often we might have been told by one person who doesn't matter. Sadly, sometimes it was might have even been a teacher about something that you couldn't do well, and we believe it. But when our partner who loves us or our kids say, wow, you're so good at that, like we doubt what they're saying. And I think finding what's positive within ourselves and what we are good at is one way of helping us achieve our goals and maybe pushing the boundary to try something that we wouldn't have done before. Definitely. So yeah, I agree with what you're saying. I think that is important for connection is, not believing what someone 10 years ago said to us.
So one of the things that I've watched is when we dismiss something that somebody gives us, we're dismissing them, right? And so if a spouse is going, "Oh, you're so good at this," and, "Oh, no, I'm not. I'm not good at that." You're basically saying, "I'm disregarding you," not just disregarding. I'm not. It's not the false humility. I had a professor who years ago, somebody would give him a compliment. He'd go, "Oh, let me take that in," and he would just sit there and go, "Yeah, thank you so much for that," and he would receive it. He never
Yes.
turned it away. He just was like, "Let me take that in and enjoy that for a minute."
Yes, I love that. I learned that later in life, but I love that. I often will say if someone compliments me, I'm like, "Oh, I received that."
Yeah.
I take that in. I think that's a beautiful way to take in a compliment for sure. My last question, Lee, and this has been such a wonderful conversation. I've loved it so much. So, if you had a friend who was a teacher, and they felt like their relationship was on pause, and they're listening to what we're saying today, and we've given them so much great information. Well, you've given them so much great information. What would you tell them first? Like, what's the first small step someone could take if they're like, okay, my relationship is actually on pause a little bit? What's the first small thing you would say they should try or do first?
Yeah. So this is the how do we activate what we've talked about?
Yes.
That's right. Push the button and let's activate this. So let me give one more piece and then we'll activate. Right.
Okay.
One of the core beliefs that I have about a marriage that's successful is they see it as a we. I call it being a we. And when I'm writing, it's capital W, capital E, bold, italics, whatever I can do to say a we, because there is a separate entity you've built that's outside of the two individuals. And to be able to go, I'm protecting our relationship, for instance, is protecting the we, to engage with that. And it doesn't mean you lose yourself.
Right.
It actually means that you're bringing your best self to it. So I'm going to use that analogy of we to team, to work together as a team. When you have two people together, there are two options. You can either say we're together in this or we're in opposition to each other in this. And I watch couples do one or the other. It's hard to do both. So if you're on a team together, the goal is to play your best, to support the team and to win together and support the other person. And so that mindset is so important as the background for what I say next. So I've named 3 levels of connection where couples get disconnected. So we've given a diagnosis of where the disconnection is. And so now the prescription is wherever you find yourself on those 3 levels, try to do just a little bit more, regardless of what your spouse is doing. Try to do a little bit more. Don't wait for the other person to come towards you. You go towards that person with a little bit more. You can't do a lot more if you've been disconnected because that sets it up where you're chasing. And when you're chasing, there's spacing. And so you've got to find a way of pacing the process, right? And so to add a little bit more, if you go, wow, we just don't do much physical connecting, to start a little bit more than where you are. If you find that you've been reporting, just to add one more piece of, oh, I had a meeting, and oh, by the way, that meeting was really tough, and just to add a little extra piece in there, and to listen for where they are offering those pieces, and to go a bit further. If a spouse says, it was a tough day at the office, oh, what was hard about it? Tell me about what happened. To go a little bit deeper. Spiritual connection, many people find that they are completely disconnected there. So here's a shortcut.
Okay.
You read a book and you say, you know what, that book had made this point and I really disagree with it, or I really agree with it. And this is how it spoke to me. People do that all the time. And so it's not like you're sitting now going, let's spiritually connect here, but you're doing that because you're offering something of what that meant to you. You watch a movie and the movie had some important point for
Hmm.
you, to be able to say, this is what I got from that movie. It was so deep. What did it mean for you? And
Okay.
you begin to share the deeper, more vulnerable parts just by offering that and then mirroring back when it comes your way. So just a little bit more on those 3 areas is a great way of starting to build, because it's just a little bit more, a little bit more. We talked about the physics of this.
Yeah.
That's how you get the momentum built up.
Yes, I can see that because normally when you watch something together or read, even like the partner doesn't even have to obviously have read the book. You can just say, "This is what they said. This is what I thought." It was quite interesting. Like, what are your thoughts? Like, just actually asking them what they thought about that. That's
Yeah.
brilliant. I like that to kind of build that connection. That's amazing. Wow, Lee, you just shared so much amazing information today. I'm so grateful that you came. I've learned so much and I can't wait. I'm going to pop all your books into the show notes as well. And it's just been really fascinating. And I just want to say thank you so
Oh,
much. I
thank you.
wish you like the most successful year ever.
Thank you. It's been a great conversation.
Okay, so tell me in the comments what resonated with you because I just loved everything Lee said. I love his energy, especially. And maybe today all you can get through is just even starting a small conversation or making one small deposit into creating a connection with your partner, with your kids, with your, your dog. It can be really anything that's going to work for you. And remember, I'm a mindset coach. I work specifically with teachers. I love helping teachers if they want to set goals to get themselves further along in their careers. That might see you in a different area of education. It might see you out of education. But if you're looking for someone to help you navigate that, please contact me. And if you know a teacher who might need this, like send it to them because we are not alone in this situation. And you do not have to figure it out on your own. I am sending you all the love, and I will see you in the next episode.